Cageside with Sean Morgan.
And welcome everybody, another episode, first episode of 2024 Cageside with John Morgan. I'm your host, Eric McMahon. Kind of off a dead period in MMA, at least high profile MMA, a lot of regional promotions going on. I actually was at one in Mississippi this past weekend. And my man sitting right across the way, he was at match day in Atlantic City. If you guys aren't seeing what CFFC is doing, they are having collegiate wrestling on UFC Fight Pass. It is awesome to watch. You can follow him on Twitter, John Morgan _MMA. He is John Morgan, fresh off of a lot of plane delays. What's up, pal?
I'm good, man. It's a weird one, right? Because you said it, the plane delays getting home were not a lot of fun last night. We had a great matchup out in Atlantic City. It was awesome. West Virginia, Columbia went at it. It went down to the final match. And, man, I appreciate you saying the stuff about CFFC match. It's made me such a fan of college wrestling this year, like really being a part of this team and seeing it up close. I was always aware of the sport, but not really as involved in it as I was this year. It has made me a huge fan. So that was amazing. Then American Airlines, look, I'm a loyal customer. I've been around a long time. Delays where it's like they just keep saying we'll board in 5 minutes, and then we'll board in 5 minutes, and then we'll board in 5 minutes, and eventually we got moved to another plane. And yeah, I got home last night.
And then you'll board in 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's it. And then it's just wait. Oh yeah, then we got to the new plane, and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, the flight attendants have timed out, so we've got to change the crew." And people were going crazy. It was wild, but finally got home last night about 4 a.m. So I'm a little tired because of that. But you said it, the period of inactivity. I'm so excited that, we kind of talk about this grind of UFC coverage because there's no real off season, right? I mean, there's like 3 weeks away. But, man, that 3 weeks away seems like forever. So it's like time to get back to business with high-level UFC events. And then, of course, PFL and Bellator's got big announcements coming and all that. So, yeah. The holidays were great, but now it's time to get back to some big MMA fights.
It is. And, look no further than, I don't know how big, big promotion UFC this weekend coming up for a fight night at the Apex, but then followed by banger, right? We got the banger the following week in Toronto, Canada, Toronto, I believe it is. UFC 297, correct. Strickland versus DDP. We'll get into that in a little bit. I just got to say, I'm loving the little softer side of DDP here as of late.
I like it, man. I think people are getting to see his personality a little bit. I mean, obviously the build-up that started to be around Israel Adesanya, man, that was so tense, and there was so much going on there, and controversy, and I understand. I mean, there's some of the things that were said. It was like, well, hold on, think about what you're saying. And so, a lot of controversy. Now we're seeing something, a whole different side of it. And look, I think it's going to be a great fight, man. I'm really looking forward to that fight. A couple weeks away, but that'll be a heck of a way to start off the pay-per-view season. And, man, Dana White just got back from vacation. He's already lining up the next couple of pay-per-views as we all build towards UFC 300 in April. I mean, man, this year is going to get off to a fast start in those big pay-per-view events for sure.
Well, I'm kind of glad you brought up Dana White because this is something that I did want to talk. He gave us this teaser at the end of the last pay-per-view and then kind of left a cliffhanger for everybody. He goes, we got some mega super fights in the works that could potentially have a good chance of happening in 2024. Somebody said, well, what are they? And he goes, you'll have to find out. Have you, I'm not asking you to break any stories here or anything, but do you have any inkling of what that or they could be?
I mean, I don't.
Can I speculate before you tell me I'm crazy?
Okay, I was going to say, because I hear some rumblings, but I don't have anything concrete. But let's hear some speculation.
My speculation is if Islam gets through Oliveira, especially in dominant fashion like he did in the first one, like I think that might even skip over Justin Gaethje and go straight to Leon Edwards if he can get past whether it get past a Muhammad or a Rakhmonov. I think that's one that's like, I think it's tailor-made, especially with the size of Islam. So I think that's one of them. Am I off base there? I know there's a log jam at kind of 70 with with Rakhmonov and Belal. But listen, I'm a fan of both these guys. I've sung both of their praises to the hilt, right? But with that all being said, I'm hardcore. You're hardcore. I don't know if the hardcores are clamoring to see Belal Muhammad or Rakhmonov, because I just don't think the marketability of those guys are there. And if there's anything that John Morgan has taught me, it's all about the machine. It's about the marketability. It is what sells, not as what the best fight, but what's going to sell.
You're 100% right, and I'm glad that you have picked up on those lessons. I will say I am in the camp of Belal Muhammad getting the next title shot, though, and I think you're right. The public isn't necessarily clamoring for it, and because of that, I think that's why we haven't heard an announcement. That's why it hasn't been done yet, because I think the UFC was out there shopping every option. Let's see what's available. So your speculation there, I think it's well-founded. Islam Makhachev, man, they have all the respect in the world for him. They've obviously they gave these opportunities to tie with Alexander Volkanovski, and if he wants to move up to 170, probably not a bad idea for Makhachev to move up to 170 at some point anyway, because he has some very difficult weight cuts in the same way that his training partner Khabib Nurmagomedov did for several years. But right now with Charles Oliveira, so here's what we know. We know Islam Makhachev is a little bit banged up right now. We know he's not going to fight right away, so he's on the shelf for a little bit. That may work out to his advantage, it may not. We do know that Charles Oliveira now has Arman Tsarukyan at UFC 300, which is a huge fight and a big opportunity. Because I know you and I are both Arman Tsarukyan fans because he's got great grappling, right? And we are both big grappling aficionados. I love that fight. Now, will it turn into the grappling match that I think it could and should, and I hope it does. So we'll see. If Oliveira wins that and beats Arman Tsarukyan, could he challenge again for Islam Makhachev, or does Islam say, no, come on? Or, hey, let's not forget, we got Justin Gaethje out there, but you also had Jorge Masvidal come out the other day and say, hey, I'm unretired. So is Jorge Masvidal back in the UFC mix? I don't think so.
I think with the more and more I think about Justin Gaethje is the more and more I think about a guy who they want to put him in, let's call them featured
Right.
fights or spectacle fights, right? Does a Justin Gaethje, now he might need it for himself, but for Justin Gaethje to be the beloved and the superstar that he is, does he need a title? And I'm going to tell you the answer to that is absolutely not.
Not.
And so and this is where I bring up Justin Gaethje and why he might get skipped over is because there's still Poirier sitting out there. There's those fights that you see these car wrecks and you're like, people are tailor-made for each other. And a Dustin Poirier and a Justin Gaethje, I don't care what these guys' record is. I don't care if we'll talk about Dustin Poirier in a matchup he just got, but he could win that fight or lose it. And that's not going to take away from the drawing power of a Poirier Gaethje 3.
Yeah, that's definitely out there. I think you hit the nail on the head in a lot of ways, right? And you're right. Justin Gaethje, I mean, look, who is an MMA fan that doesn't like watching Justin Gaethje, right? I mean, that dude is literally one of the most exciting guys in the sport. And I think he did reach that level. There were guys like the Diaz brothers, guys like, for me, like Cowboy Cerrone, where it's like, I don't care what the stakes are, gosh, maybe even a Michael Bisping back in the day before he was a champ, just because his talk was so good. And just guys that, you didn't really care what the quote unquote stakes were. There didn't need to be a title. You don't care. It's the same reason we say, right, that if Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz want to have a third fight and they're both on 10-fight losing streaks, I don't care. I want to watch it. I'm tuning in because I want to. So I think Justin Gaethje has reached that level. So I think you're spot on with that analysis. I think when you think of Justin Gaethje fights, you can think outside of the box and don't think, well, it has to be number one or it has to be this, because rankings don't matter. That dude is so exciting. You just want to watch him fight. But, and I think you hit the nail on the head too, it may matter for Justin Gaethje. And I think it does matter for Justin Gaethje. And I think right now he's sitting out and saying, you know what, man, give me Islam. I've done everything I can to deserve that title shot. And look, if he comes up short in that one, then at that point, maybe he stops talking about it. You know what I mean?
Wait another year though for that fight.
No, but I think he's willing to wait till the summertime. And I think that's maybe where we're looking with Islam. So maybe, is International Fight Week, is that where it lands? Maybe it's somewhere a little later than that. But I think Justin Gaethje, A, he's done very well for himself financially. So it's not like he's in a need to fight. B, he's always kind of had that idea that, like, listen, I know I can't do this forever. My style is so violent, you know what I mean? I can't continue to just battle forever. He's still only 35. He's not old yet by any stretch, but he's always said, I only have a handful of fights because of the way I fight. I can't do this forever. Now, you and I have talked about the way Trevor Whitman has kind of said, hey, man, we don't have to go be in a car crash every time. Maybe we can be a little bit tactical. But at the end of the day, He still loves those car crashes. So I think reading the tea leaves, knowing that, because the question was Charles Oliveira going to get the title shot? Was Justin Gaethje going to get the title shot? Knowing that now Oliveira is matched up, that just leads me to believe that Gaethje is willing to sit out and say, I'm good. I'm sitting. I'm waiting for Islam. I'll fight Islam at his first availability, probably sometime this summer, maybe late summer, but I want that title shot. And then we see where it goes from there. And if he's champion, obviously he fights the next toughest contenders. If he's not champion and he loses there, then I think Justin Gaethje probably says, well, that was my last chance at becoming undisputed champion. I was interim champ. That was my last chance at becoming undisputed. It's not going to happen. But now, get me the biggest names available. Yeah, maybe I face Poirier again. Maybe, whoever was out there, whatever the biggest names available are, because Justin Gaethje, again, you can throw the rankings out. If that dude fights, you want to watch him fight.
Well, and Justin Gaethje, I think, could really fight 55. He could go up to 70. There's some great matches for him up at 70. And let's not forget, Justin Gaethje wrestled D1, right?
Yeah.
He wrestled D1, and he's known for his striking, right? But he does have great take, and that wrestling is proven great takedown defense. People aren't going to shoot in on him, so they're almost forced to meet him in the middle, which is playing right into him. But that brings up all this because the common dance partner that everybody wants and or needs is Islam Makhachev, right? So if Islam Makhachev has already gone on record, Khabib has already gone on record as saying, there's nothing for me at 55. Right? And so it begs the question to me, and this is why I bring all this up. How big of a star and or how much pull does Islam Makhachev / Khabib Nurmagomedov have to say, no, we're not going to fight Justin Gaethje. We're going to go up and we're going to test the waters at 70. Maybe and this is a big maybe, because I don't know why Belal Muhammad has been passed over so much. But maybe let that fight happen, with Leon, or give us Leon. Who's the person that holds the sway over the UFC? Or does he not have enough juice to say in the UFC, no, you are going to fight Oliveira, or you are going to fight Justin Gaethje? Because that poses a problem. And the problem is we've already seen Gaethje and Oliveira for maybe an interim or there. It is, Charlie Brown, with the thing going on right now, like that. That's when I think of this situation. That's just what I think of here is like Islam has already said, and does he have the pull?
Man, that's a great question. I mean, look, I think he does to some degree. I mean, obviously, everything. Islam can easily say, hey, man, I gave Volkanovski 2 shots. You know what I mean? You guys wanted me to do that. I didn't think he necessarily deserved it again. I gave him that. I've done everything that you asked of me. As you said, he's got Khabib in his corner. He's got Ali Abdelaziz in his corner. So, I mean, yeah, look, they say
that guy can make some noise.
He can make some noise. But listen, Justin Gaethje, he's got Justin Gaethje too. So, I mean, we'll see. And I think, to be honest with you, I mean, look, Islam could say, look, I've done enough. You guys know how tough these weight cuts are on me. I'm going up to 170. But you touched on, there's a logjam right now at 170. If there was nobody deserving of being in there, I think it's a lot easier. But like Justin Gaethje, there's a lot of people deserving at 170. And I think Justin Gaethje is deserving at 155. And I think, had Islam held a previous victory over Justin Gaethje, then I could hear him say, look, I've already beat this guy once. I know he worked his way back, but come on, man. I want new names. I think Justin Gaethje, for a legacy, Justin Gaethje is a name that Islam needs to have if he's going to, say, I cleaned out the division or I have no more challenges here. So I think he needs this fight, to be honest with you. And again,
I don't disagree, but he is already publicly claimed.
That's one that I agree. I know he has publicly claimed, but just because it's publicly claimed doesn't mean it's true. I think Justin Gaethje is the one that needs to happen. And then I do think 170 lies in the future. But yeah, I'm in the camp of Belal Muhammad has got to be next at 170. It sounds like they're leaning in that direction. I don't know what the hesitation is in getting it signed. I spoke to Belal last week, and he's like, look, I'm working under the assumption that I am. I believe I should be, but, no contract just yet. So I think 170 in his future, but I think Gaethje has to happen first.
What's got to happen? What's got to happen with Belal Muhammad right now, right? Because, Fight Night, Dana White's like, Rachmaninoff looked really good. So I don't know, maybe we'll get back Monday and talk about it, or Tuesday in the War Room and talk about it. And then we kind of get on this hiatus, right? And Belal Muhammad, if there's nothing that this guy does, is he is putting his name out there. He's talking a lot of crap around a lot of people. He's self-promoting. He's doing everything right. What is it about him that the UFC and or other opponents, I understand why other opponents don't want to fight him. Not that they're scared, but he poses a huge problem, right? What is it about him that he is continually either not thought of top of mind first or passed over?
I think maybe, to be honest, it's just like his fighting style is effective, but not necessarily as, racking up as many finishes. People want to see big knockouts. People want to see big submissions. And I don't know, he's not one of these guys who's just like, man, that's the scariest dude. If he touches your chin, you're going to sleep. No, not necessarily. He's going to overwhelm you with power. Or there's other guys in the division who are like, bro, just don't hit the floor with him, man. If you go to the canvas, you're in danger. Like, bail out as soon as possible. He doesn't have that, but he's also very effective in the grappling. Like, there's no weaknesses anywhere, right? You don't look at his game and be like, man, you see this massive hole right here where I can take advantage of and I can definitely beat him there. He's going to put a pace on you. You know what I mean? He's going to stay in your face. So I think that's part of it. The fighting style factors into it. And then I think, too, it's funny because you said, he's talking but he's always like the most respectful talking you can. He's not a big trash talker by any stretch of the imagination. You know what I mean? So it's not like he's going to go out there and sell some big storyline. And unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, I mean, I do mean unfortunately, I think storylines are almost too much of a factor at some points. You know what I mean? Where it's only about what you say and not about what you get there. And again, I do understand the business side of this. I do understand the economics of it, right? It's not just wins and losses. It's not just like typical league play in any other sport. Like, no. We're trying to generate the most revenue, the most fan interest. It'd be like if every week the NBA had to reshuffle the lineup and figure out what the most exciting matchups they could make that week would be. You know what I mean? How different would everything look? And that's what the UFC has to do. So because of that, I just don't think Belal necessarily ticks all those boxes. And I guess there is a history that he did fight Leon Edwards before. It didn't, I mean, it looked like Leon was handling it pretty well, but the way the fight ended, to me, that fight never got completed. So I don't think that necessarily Belal has like the biggest superstar status written all over him. But to me, man, and I get it, economics factor in, but there comes a time where a guy just beats everybody in the way.
Undeniable at that point.
That's it. You threw every roadblock at him, right? You threw Gilbert Burns at him. You threw Sean Brady at him. You threw Vicente Luque at him. You threw Stephen Thompson at him. You threw Damian Maia at him. And he beat them all. He beat them all. And at some point, there just has to be a point where you go, okay, maybe you're not our most, you're not going to be our biggest superstar. You don't move the needle as much as so-and-so. But when you win that many fights and you beat that many top contenders, even if it's reluctantly, we have to give you this shot. So I hope that they stick to that, man. I really, really do. Because, look, people have been saying, oh, man, what if Masvidal came back? And, you got the three-piece in the soda with Leon Edwards. And my gosh, if that's not a storyline. And my gosh, if Masvidal isn't a superstar. And you know what? If they made that fight, I couldn't argue with it. And guess what? Guess what? I'm reaching into my pocket. Take my money. I'm going to watch. So, I mean, like, when you think about it from that perspective, like, I can't deny it if something crazy like that happened. But, man, I just look at what Belal Muhammad has done. I think about what this sport is about as much as it is about storylines and fun and selling. When a guy goes out there and just beats every damn person in his way, give him the shot, man. Give him the shot.
As crazy as it sounds, is that a strong enough fight to main event a pay-per-view?
Probably not, if I'm being honest with you. Probably not.
And I think that's the problem, right?
Now, let me ask you this. Oh, this gets really interesting. Is it big enough to be a co-main event, but small enough where nobody gets mad if it was underneath a headliner of Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler? Could a non-title fight with Conor McGregor and yeah. I don't even need to finish the question, right? I don't even need to finish the question. We're all like, yep, that's
John
okay.
Morgan, you say you are one of the most insightful, smartest people, but that was maybe one of your dumber questions I've ever heard you ask. This is Conor freaking McGregor, and I'm glad you brought him up. Okay, so I want to put a bow on this really quick.
Okay. Okay.
I kid. It wasn't dumb. It was logical because
I
the title
know.
has to get top billing, right?
It should, except for that guy. Except for that guy.
Yeah, except Mystic Mac himself, right?
That's it.
So I'm glad you got to 300 because that was always back there as one of those fights they put on 300 where it just enhances the magnitude of the card, but it does not have to take top billing.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think so. It's got to be the fight to make. Like I said, I spoke to Belal Muhammad last week. He said, look, if April's the time to go, UFC 300, I can go. That is like the month leading up to that is Ramadan, which would means a time of fasting for all the daylight.
Last year he fought like a week after Ramadan.
Yeah, he did. And so I asked him, I was like, hey, you did it before, so I know it's, you're okay with it, but title fight, does that change anything? You know what I mean? Like the stakes are a little bit higher. And he's like, nope, not at all. He was like, in fact, I would almost take it as like a blessing that this is part of my story that I have to train for it during Ramadan because nothing came easy to me. And I'm like, man, I love your attitude about that. So yeah, I agree.
That's made me a bigger fan of this, just hearing that.
100%, man. So I think you're right. I don't think that's a main event. It looks like 300 might be the spot for it to be. So we'll see. Hopefully some announcements coming soon. As we know, Dana White, he had a vacation. He's coming back from vacation. His first day back, he's already jumping on IG making fight announcements.
Yeah. Well, actually, I read it. I hadn't seen it yet. But with that being said, Conor McGregor comes out and announces his date, time, and opponent yet to be confirmed. How is it, or why is it that they wouldn't do this lockstep? They being the UFC, pronouns.
I think they would really like to, you know what I mean? But I think Conor McGregor is his own man. I think they would really like, we had a whole PR plan for this, you know what I mean? We had like some press conferences and some tours.
But they would have to know that he's going to do that, right? So you would think. Or do you think it's like, hey, this is what we're targeting. Are you cool with it? And he's just like, done, before they even finalized it in between them. Because I find it hard to believe that a UFC would miss out on that opportunity, like you just said.
Yeah, I think it's probably like, hey, here's the discussion. And Conor, look, what does Conor do so well? He controls the narrative, right? Like he controls it. He sets the tone for everything. And by the way, I've said it before. I'm going to say it. I love that little video he put out, man. Like that guy, like the evil, sinister laugh as he talked about the weight class being middleweight and making the announcement. I loved it. So, still unofficial yet. He said Michael Chandler. He said June International Fight Week. He said 185 pounds, which I don't necessarily say is impossible. I think it could be 185 pounds, but not official yet. And yes. I think the UFC would like to make announcements in lockstep with Conor McGregor, but I think Conor McGregor is his own man. He is his own superstar. And I don't think he worries about, like, what are they going to do? Like, pull the fight from me? Like, we're good. I'm going to make my announcement.
I read something. If he does that, he'd be the only fighter, like, in fighting history to have knockouts in 4 different weight classes.
How crazy is that, man? From 45 all the way up to 85. I mean, you're talking, when we talk about in combat sports, like multiple division champions, boxing, obviously, it's a big accomplishment to move up in weight classes. But man, you're talking about
within like 3 divisions or within 10 pounds.
That's what I'm saying. You're talking about, he moved up 3 pounds in one, and then he moved up another 4 pounds in one. You're like, that's amazing. I'm like, my man moved up 40 pounds and got knockouts. You know what I mean? It's possible. So it would be an incredible accomplishment, man. It's man, I mean, just unbelievable. Conor McGregor, the superstar that he is, and the things that he's accomplished. It's such an interesting discussion with Conor McGregor because when you talk about like the greatest of all time, I don't necessarily have him in those discussions just because like the longevity. You know what I mean? Like I love seeing guys like John Jones, George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva, Demetrius Johnson that just knock out like 8, 9, 10 title defenses. It's amazing. But like Conor McGregor has put himself into this own category of his own, you know what I mean? Where it's just like the things that he accomplished, like nobody else would even think of, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. 4 divisions, unbelievable. And obviously, the champ status, the boxing Floyd Mayweather. I mean, what he's been able to do is amazing. It's a difficult discussion because again, he doesn't have those longevity records, but when you just look at the body of work and what he's meant to the sport and what he's accomplished and how he just thinks outside of the box, you know what I mean? To do things that previously you just thought were impossible. it's an unbelievable what he's done.
And he just had his third child.
Amazing. Family's growing as well, man. And every time I see him, he's eating good, bro. He's got the
big boy.
Expensive dinners. Yeah, he's getting big. 185. Hell, he might come out and be like 205 next, baby. We're going up to light heavyweight next.
Dude, he's thick. Boy, looking thick. But
yes, he is.
So you brought up Jon Jones earlier. His next dance partner, for all intents and purposes, is Stipe Miocic. But Tom Aspinall has a problem with that, right? And Tom Aspinall, he's chirping, how can this be that? I'm the interim champ. Blah, blah. I mean, everything you'd expect somebody in the interim title to say, and especially something you would expect somebody who's young and hungry to say, because that guy is young and hungry.
Monster.
But I love Stipe. Stipe comes out as the old wise man in the situation, being like, settle down, young man. Just settle down. You'll have your time. If this doesn't make Stipe more endearing by him just being like, you'll have your time. You're the man. But you just got to calm down a little bit.
First of all, let me just say, I love Tom Aspinall. Like, just his whole rise, man. Just seems like a good dude, man. Every interaction you have with him, and you talk about, like, man, the fears that he had in supporting his family and, had the injury that he had to battle with. And, I mean, the emotions that he showed as he claimed the interim title. I mean,
leaving vacation to get on a week's notice.
Unbelievable, man. And I like his game too, right? And the heavyweight division to be that athletic. Again, you and I are grappling fans, has some great jiu-jitsu to go along with heavy hands as well. Like, Aspinall is the future of the division. And some might say he's the present. Here's another one. Because if we're sitting from the outside looking in, like, you know what, man? I can't argue with Tom Aspinall. Like, dude, his name is as hot as anybody in the division right now. I love to
see him pushing for it. That's what you have to do.
100%. And he's doing it like in a respectful way too, right? Like, he's not talking trash. Like, John and Stipe, you suck. You were never that good. No, it's like, bro, you guys are the greats, but you've been sitting around. Like, it's my time now. Like, let's go. And so I respect, he's always said, I want to fight Jon Jones, not out of disrespect, but just because I have so much respect for him that I want to test myself against him. So I love all that.
But he brought up the 3-year layoff that Stipe would have had.
And it's so true. But here's where I think we go back to the business side of things as well. And look, I do think the hardcores, myself, you, guys like us, I think a lot of us, and I want to say this in the most respectful way possible, would probably be more excited for Aspinall versus Jon Jones than we would be for Stipe versus Jon Jones, if we're being honest. But we got to think about the casual audience. We got to think about the greater audience. We got to think about what it means for history, right?
Legacy. We talked about legacy earlier.
That's it. Now, so the legacy is what matters. And let me just also say, I just don't think, and here's another thing, and you know this very well, but I think people have to understand, I don't think Jon Jones wants to fight anybody other than Stipe Miocic because of legacy. I don't think Stipe Miocic wants to fight anybody else other than Jon Jones because of legacy. And some people would say, well, that's because they're scared of Tom Aspinall. If you say that, you obviously don't know much about mixed martial arts. There's nobody on the UFC roster that is scared of anybody else on the roster. Now, are there matchups that they think might not favor them as much? Yeah, absolutely. Are there fights that they think would be more challenging than others? Yeah, but there's nobody that's scared. But I just don't think Jon or Stipe want to fight anybody else other than each other because of the legacy that's at stake.
Yeah, but going back to Stipe, did you see him kind of comment back on Aspinall? Just calm down, young feller.
I love it. That's the elder statesman saying, hey, man, you'll get your chance. Don't worry. I'm not saying we can't ever fight. Let me just do this thing I got to do for my legacy first, and then I'll start getting to you young bucks next.
Yeah, gosh, that just makes, like, I always say Stipe is probably like, I wouldn't even say him current fighter in the UFC. Hendo, for me, is my end-all, be-all. Right, but Stipe ranks up there just because I think of the value system that the guy has, the way he's operated his whole career. And I think, truth be told, I mean, he deserves it. The UFC owes him it. I mean, he was a very active heavyweight champion as well. He fought all the big dogs, and he had some, he's just an overall good guy. I mean fireman still.
I was going to say, an active firefighter to this date, a legit active first responder. And, oh, by the way, one of the greatest heavyweights in UFC history. Another guy that, maybe wasn't necessarily marketable for like what he did on the microphone, not the most outspoken guy, never going to talk a lot of trash, just going to show up, with his lunch pail and do his work or whatever, but that had the highlight reel, that had the power, that had the great fights. And so, yeah, man, again, I just, Stipe, most title defenses in heavyweight history, John Jones, greatest of all time, now moving up a division. Like, it is a legacy fight, man. It's a fight that needs to happen. I get it. And so I understand why a lot of people are clamoring and saying, man, come on, these dudes have been sitting out forever. Like, let's get the new blood in there, Tom Aspinall. And I can't argue with that. If that's your argument, I get it. And I won't say that you're wrong. I would just say, hold on, step back, realize it's not just the legacy that the UFC wants to put together. It's the legacy that John wants. It's the legacy that Stipe wants. They want this fight, each of them. And that's why that fight's going to happen next. But Tom Aspinall is not very far behind. And good for him to keep his name in the mix. I think Tom Aspinall probably realizes, like, let's have a little fun with this. I don't know that I'm necessarily going to overtake anybody, but I might as well keep my name in the mix. And if something happens, if Stipe gets hurt, if John gets hurt, if for whatever reason something does happen, he'll be right there to step in.
And let's not act like this is a surprise to Aspinall. This was all crystally clear laid out to him, even prior to his interim title victory.
He understands the game. Yeah, and it was. I mean, look, Dana talked about it. Everybody, look, no, this is what we're going to do next. Yeah. This is what's going to happen next. So, yeah, he knows. But you know what? Just because that's what's supposed to happen. And this, again, Tom's a smart guy. Doesn't mean you shouldn't keep your name in the conversation, right? Doesn't mean you shouldn't be there. Because, again, things can happen. Again, injuries can happen. Whatever. There's so many things that can pop out. We know, right? I mean, fights change all the time. So why not just keep yourself in that conversation? Why not keep your name top of mind? So if anything does happen and they need to turn to you, everybody's like, you know what? That's an even bigger fight. I want to see that even more versus like, well, you've been quiet. You haven't been saying anything. They put you in there and everybody goes, yeah, but that's not what I wanted to see. It's smart. It's just smart.
How long is Aspinall willing to wait?
He said when he won the title, the interim title, he's like, I won't wait a year. He's like, I just won't, because I asked him that. Like, look, this fight's supposed to happen. Earliest it could happen is maybe spring, summer, something like that. Well, he's like, I'm not going to wait a whole year. So he might end up fighting somebody else first. He might end up defending the title, his interim title, while we wait for this unification.
Does interim champs get pay-per-view points?
They do. The money's the same.
Right?
Money's the same.
There we go. All right. Well, so he's in his prime earning years. And so I think I think his family would say, hey, I think you should go get another fight in the meantime.
Yeah. And I think, you need them. I mean, look, he got his first big paycheck, you know what I mean? But the once you have that title around your waist, man, the checks get even bigger. If I'm just being honest, you look at the name that's probably top of mind that's out there for it, it'd be Cyril Gane. And I got to think he likes that matchup. You know what I mean? I got to think he likes that matchup stylistically. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I kind of think he'll probably end up fighting Gane in the meantime. But if anything happens with Stipe or John, you can be sure that he'd be ready to step in there. Now, will John or Stipe be okay with that? I don't know. That might be a different story, but we'll see.
That could be a 300 too.
Could be, man. We got, just expect the announcements are going to start falling. Like, the matchmakers were on vacation. Like I said, this little stretch, it's again, we don't have in mixed martial arts, especially with the UFC, a big off season. There's not, there's a couple weeks. Everybody tried to take a couple weeks off. They were working a little bit, but everybody was kind of withdrawing for a little bit. But now they're back in the office. They're back in the swing, and we got some big fight announcements coming.
Well, a fight announcement that actually was it yesterday or I think today it got announced. Dustin Poirier. You want to talk about huge balls.
Man.
You want to talk about somebody who does not need to take a fight, but he's going to take a fight in a co-headlining spot of UFC 299 in Miami. Dustin Poirier, ranked third, is taking on, I believe, 13. I don't know if he's ranked third. I believe it's 13th, but somebody that if you don't know now,
you know. Number 12. Yeah, number 12. They're close. Yep.
Benoit Saint Denis. This guy is a savage. And for Dustin Poirier to say, yes, I'm going to take that fight, it just shows what a dog this guy is, why everything that everybody's always said about him is correct. I can summarize it in him just agreeing to this fight.
I agree. I agree 100%, man. That's exactly what my initial thoughts were when this matchup was announced, right? Like, first, Benoit Saint Denis. If he's been flying under your radar a little bit, this dude is dangerous, right? He's a Frenchman. He came into the UFC, had a terrible loss. He's come back with 5 straight wins, 5 straight stoppage wins, 2 straight violent knockouts. I mean, the dude is scary, right? I mean, he's a badass dude that's exciting, right? Yeah. I mean, there's an incredible backstory, right? So he's a dude that's actually gaining a lot of steam among the hardcore community. Like, oh, I like this guy. Maybe this is my guy I want to follow. But you hit the nail on the head there. So I'm happy for Benoit Saint Denis because he wanted this big matchup. He was trying to move his way up the ranks, and now he's getting a marquee matchup. I mean, a signature, one of the biggest stars in UFC history, future Hall of Famer, all that. So happy for Benoit Saint Denis. But I thought exactly the same way you did. Dustin Poirier, man. And I can't say enough good things about Dustin Poirier as a human being, just the way he carries himself, the thing that he does in the community outside of fighting. But, man, come on. We talked about, Justin Gaethje being a guy you always want to watch fight. Dustin Poirier is a guy you always want to watch fight because he's going to put on a show. But in an age where sometimes people that are higher up the rankings don't want to face people lower down because they understand, like, if Dustin Poirier wins this fight against a very dangerous, savage dude, some people are going to be like, yeah, but come on, who was that guy? That guy was nobody, So, Dustin doesn't really have anything to gain. Does this get him a title shot? No. But he's a fighter, and he goes out there and fights. And, yeah, it's how he puts bread on the table for his family, but he knows that he goes out there to entertain, right? Dustin Poirier has said, I don't need to fight anymore. Like, I've done very well. Don't need to fight anymore. My family's taken care of, but he still loves to do it, and he's taking on tough opponents.
So, I don't know if this crossed your mind as well, but when I read it this morning, knowing that it was the co-headline of 299, the Sugar Show versus Chito Vera, did it cross your mind that maybe Aljo was onto something when he said O'Malley wasn't the draw we thought he was, and maybe that's backed up by the metrics, and so they're like, okay, now we got to put a Dustin in there with somebody and to boost that card. And I mean, dude, I never thought this way, but now you got me thinking this way.
That's interesting. You know what? That was not the initial thought that crossed my mind, although that was because I was being delayed over and over by American Airlines and being stuck in an airport and wasn't sure I was going to be able to make it home to even be here today. So that might have been why it didn't cross my mind. But as soon as you say that, it is interesting. Now, I agree and disagree with Aljamain Sterling's assessments that Sean O'Malley is maybe not as big of a pay-per-view star. I think there's a little bit of kind of this Jake Paul effect, right? Where like you can't tell me that Sean O'Malley's not a star. He is. I see the social media metrics. I saw
our metrics.
I see it. All the engagement, man. I see it. The guy is a star. But is he maybe a bigger star among the younger community that is not one that really wants to plop down or has the ability to plop down $75 for a pay-per-view on a weekend, and maybe a little bit more comfortable than an older generation in seeking alternative methods of viewing UFC pay-per-views that don't cost quite as much. You know what I mean? So I think that may very well be a reality. I mean, it's pretty. I mean, is it possible that Sean O'Malley's fan base skews younger than Dustin Poirier's? Like, yeah, 100%. So from a business perspective, is it a good idea to bring in a guy like Dustin Poirier that, again, a little bit older generation, the pay-per-view generation might be like, oh, I'm not missing that guy's fight. Like, let's go. You know what, man? I think you're onto something there. My man, EMAC has evolved into his booking process. It's no longer just a storyline. My man's getting in the back room now. He's talking to the accountants. He's figuring out the P&L statements and how we got to get things done. And you know what? That's a savvy observation. I think you might be right.
Bam, look at that. Starting off 2024 strong.
And by the way, how about that 299 card, man? I'm just looking at it right now since you brought it up, man. Gilbert Burns versus Jack Della Maddalena. That's a fight. How about Kevin Holland versus Michael Page?
You skipped over one.
Come on. What did I skip? Well, I mean,
Young Yadong, Peter Yan.
Oh, come on. Yeah, I wasn't there yet. Oh. I'm looking on UFC.com, and this card is so good. That's further down.
We have not talked about the signing of MVP.
Oh, man, I love that. That guy is going to be exciting. And I love the matchup that they put for Kevin Holland. Yes, because you got to come in there and you got to put on a show. I love it. This is one of those. I think Kevin Holland was the perfect debut opponent for Michael Venom Page because it's going to be fun. They're going to go at it. They're going to have a little chat. You know what I mean? They're going to have the interesting side because, look, whenever you bring in these like high-profile free agents, and I believe MVP is a high-profile free agent, maybe not one that's going to sell 1 million pay-per-views, but as far as like the hardcore community knows, he's got entertainment value.
Wait until the UFC crowd gets a hold of this guy.
Oh my!
He's gonna be a huge star.
Absolutely, man. Once they see what this guy can do, but there's always two ways to look at that from the UFC perspective, right? The one is you can come in and be like, hey, this guy that we're bringing off the streets that was on another organization, let's put him against somebody that's a fun fight that people are going to really enjoy. Or you can be like, let's put him up against a guy I'm pretty sure he's going to lose to. And I don't think that's what they did here. You know what I mean? Like, because you could give Michael Venom Page an amazing wrestler, like a dude that's just going to grapple him, and that would be a tough stylistic matchup. And Kevin Holland may grapple with him, but I don't think so because Kevin Holland likes to put on a show too.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited about. Yeah, there's just a lot of excitement in the air right now surrounding the UFC. A lot of confusion surrounding Bellator PFL. And so, well, you know, obviously we focus a little more on the UFC right now. They're the big dog. And coming up this week, I spent a lot of time on it, but Ankalaev and Johnny Walker this Saturday from the Apex in Las Vegas. Ankalaev 17-1-1, Johnny Walker 21-7, who is having a little bit of a come up, a re-come up, shall I say. But this is a tall task.
Yeah, it really is, man. This is a big fight. There's no question about it. As you said, maybe not necessarily the biggest main event to start things off in the year, but it's a key one in the division. There's no question about that. And it's number 3 versus number 7, so obviously it matters. There was the no contest, and so you put the fight back together, and it's a good way to start the year. I think Magomed Ankalaev is a heavy favorite for a reason, man. This dude looks like the real deal. You know, he had the unfortunate draw with Jan Blachowicz, which I think that one kind of set him back a little bit because he was another guy that was on like this insane win streak, but just wasn't getting the opportunities, right? Like, was having trouble getting matchups, and then, had an opportunity to fight for the light heavyweight title, split draw, just left a sour taste in everybody's mouth, that you didn't get to move the division forward. Then he has this no contest. So Ankalaev's in a weird spot. Meanwhile, Johnny Walker, we know what Johnny Walker's capable of. He's capable of excitement every time out there, but, he had kind of a lot of setbacks as well. And as you said, he's on a 3-fight win streak, so he's earned this opportunity. They did have the no contest. But stylistically, it's a tough one for him. So it's a key match. No contest.
It was looking like it was going down a path.
Exactly. It was one that you kind of felt like you already knew what the outcome was going to be. So, and I think that's reflected in the odds. So, I think this is a big moment for Ankalaev. Johnny Walker can come into play. Spoiler, he's that guy. But it would be a big upset. Huge, athletic. You know what I mean? Just a big dude, big wingspan. We'll flying knee. We'll do whatever. You know what I mean? So, but it's a tall order for him. So I lean Ankalaev in this fight, and we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, and I knew, even if we look, Cutabella, Paul Craig, Anthony Smith, his last 3 wins before the no contest. And let's be honest, his 2 losses before that, Jamal Hill, Thiago Santos. And he knocked off a guy prior to those 2 in Ryan Spann, who we all know is, I don't know if he's the gatekeeper in that division, but that's no dude you want to trifle with either. And he stops him with punches back in 2020. So when we say he took a step back, let's remember who he took a step back against. Current champ, well, I guess not the current champ, in Jamal Hill and Thiago Santos.
Yeah, you have to be really careful with that sometimes when you look at losing streaks. It's a balance, right? Because you look at guys that have some losses, but when it's at the very top of the division, you know what I mean? There's still losses, so you have to respect them. Like, you can only, if you lose to number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, does that make you number 6? Like, I don't know. You suffered losses, but yeah, I don't think you write people off when they're having setbacks against guys that are at the very, very top of the division. Like, it's hard to be successful at the absolute highest level, man. This dude is still an absolute talent.
All right, and then another interesting matchup that I'm really perplexed. And before we started talking, you said, "Oh, he ain't taking this one unless he already knows when he's booked next." Jim Miller and Gabriel Benitez. Jim Miller, obviously UFC 100, UFC 200, has been telling everybody he wants UFC 300. But yet now he's got a January fight on this weekend's Fight Night.
I was a little surprised by this one too. So here's the thing is, Jim Miller has been talking about it for a while that, 100, 200, and I think it's like probably why we were about UFC 260 or something. He starts saying, I want to be on 300 too. Like that would be pretty cool to be 100, 200, 300. And now, by the way, he has said that doesn't mean I'm retiring right after 300, but I want to be on it. So he's made that clear. Dana White's been asked directly about it. Here's Jim Miller, one of the legends of the company, been around forever. Dude says he wants on 300. Will you put him on 300? And Dana's like, absolutely. Like that dude fights anybody, does whatever. Like, yeah, we'll put him wherever he wants. We'll put him on 300. So the slot was guaranteed. I think the slot is still guaranteed, but you never know what happens in a fight, right? I mean, we're only 3 months away from 300, and Jim Miller's taking this fight with Gabriel Benitez. Knock on wood here, but things can happen in a fight, right? Injuries can't bother. So I was a little bit surprised by this announcement for sure, just because I know how much that 300 appearance means to Jim Miller. But you know what? We talked about Dustin Poirier's decision to fight down and maybe how it just exemplified who he is as a fighter. I think maybe this just exemplifies who Jim Miller is as a fighter. Like, yeah, I want to be on 300. It means something to me, but they got something for me right here now too. And you know what I do? I'm a fighter and I fight. So I'm going to fight. We'll let the chips fall where they may. And hopefully I'm on 300. So this was a surprise booking. And again, it's not against some layup. It's not like they gave him some, newcomer that doesn't match up with him stylistically. Like Benitez is a tough guy to fight, man. So, a fight that I favored Jim Miller in stylistically, but Benitez is dangerous. And yeah, there's more hanging in the balance in the win or the loss. That historic appearance at 300 is on the line too.
A wise man once said, never pass up for show money for some mo money, because then you might end up with no money. Doesn't look like Miller's passing up for show money right now.
You never know. Hey, and it's true. Like, he's been around the game long enough. You never know, man. Nothing's guaranteed. You sit out and be like, nah, I'm waiting to 300. And then all of a sudden you get hurt in a training camp 2 weeks before 300 or something. So Jim Miller, he's a fighter. He fights. Let's go.
I love it. Following week, we're only 2 weeks away. UFC 297, Saturday, January 20th, from the Scotiabank, I believe I pronounced that right, arena in Toronto, Canada. Headline, Sean Strickland, DDP, Dricus Du Plessis. I listen, I came out, as I've well documented on this show, that I knew that Sean Strickland was going to pose a major problem. I didn't call the upset. Well, maybe, but I'm singing my own praises right now.
You keep patting yourself on the back. You deserve it. You laid out the scenario.
This fight's a problem for him. This fight's a problem for Sean Strickland. We talked about why Sean Strickland is a huge draw now. We talked about that he says a lot of crazy things, but yet a lot of insightful things within the craziness. He sticks up for what he believes his core values are, whether it being patriotic or things of that nature. And so I think this pay-per-view will sell very, very well with him headlining. I really do. In the interest of matchups, I just don't think this is a great matchup for him. And I'm going to tell you why. This is not going to be somebody who's just going to stand in the pocket and go tit for tat with him. And I don't think it's somebody that he's going to be able to push backwards at will, because that's what he does. He walks in, Philly shells, he'll let him roll. And as the guy's throwing, his opponent's always moving backwards. DDP is so herky-jerky on the feet, almost like he's not a good striker. He is so herky-jerky out there that people are going to look at him and being like, this guy's stand-up is terrible. But yet he continuously just blasts people's heads off while he doesn't. And so from a traditional boxer standpoint, with a little bit of Muay Thai infused in there, of how Strickland is light on that front foot, he needs somebody that's going to stand in front of him or going to try and shoot and then come up and sprawl and brawl. I don't think Dricus is going to do this, and he's going to be herky-jerky throwing stuff and then somehow doing a weird spin before he gets back to throwing a 1 and 2. And that weird spin had nothing to do with throwing a fight. He just kind of got off balance.
Yeah. Look, Great assessment, man. It really is a great assessment. Spot on as always, man. And I tend to agree with you. You know, it's a cliche in MMA, but it's a cliche for a reason that styles make fights, right? I mean, that's why MMA math doesn't work, where it's like, you know, so-and-so beat so-and-so. So that means no, it doesn't. It's how those two matchups come together. And I agree with you. Now, does that mean I'm saying Sean Strickland has no chance here? No, I think he absolutely does. I mean, he's tough, right? Like, Dricus Du Plessis is powerful. He's scary. As you said, the awkwardness makes it tough to predict what he's going to do. But you know, Sean Strickland's not afraid of a fight. Like, that dude is legendary for just going into a gym and sparring, like hard sparring with everybody every day, any style. Like, he just fights. Like, that's what he does. He doesn't train to drill. You know what I mean? He just fights. He's a fighter. And, you know, the longer this thing goes, Dricus Du Plessis has showed some, you know, potential gas tank issues. Now, he's had some surgery on his nose, which supposedly was really impacting like his oxygen levels, and that's why it was making.
He also said in that he was never getting tired, but he looked like he was because he was breathing out of his mouth a lot.
Right. Which, I mean, look, you know, to a judge, especially, man, the body language, it just looks bad, right? I mean, it looked really bad, like he was struggling, but man, the power is there. And you're right. I think this is going to sell well. I mean, Sean has become this, like, the most unexpected superstar story of 2023.
The hero we never thought we needed.
I mean, come on. Like, who predicted this dude at this point in his career was going to be a superstar? But he is. You talk about guys that move the needle. I mean, he does, man. He's a star at this point. And, man, the brawl they had in the crowd. I mean, come on. I mean, you don't think we're gonna be watching that on repeat in the lead up to this? The UFC is gonna be showing that, of course. And it's real. You know what I mean? It's real. Like, I mean, they went at it. Like, it's not fake. Like, they're gonna fight, and so this is gonna be a good fight. But I agree, especially early on, this is a dangerous fight for Sean Strickland. It really, really is. But man, if Sean finds a way to win this one, man, the unexpected superstar gets even more love, you know what I mean? But this is a challenge. There's no question about it. Some people might not like Dricus Du Plessis. Again, the lead up to Israel Adesanya was a little bit controversial, and you know, the rivalry between them. And so, you know, obviously, you know, that's maybe a matchup that can take place somewhere in the future. You know, Dricus has said some things along the way. You know, I don't know. He tends to rub some people the wrong way. So you might not, maybe you haven't watched his fights, or maybe you don't like the guy. But I'm telling you right now, man, he is a real danger to take home this belt at UFC 297.
I really like him. I think he's a lovable, fun guy.
He is.
But I can see why people I can see why people dislike him. I always say, like, there's somebody that you look at and you're like, why do you have everything? Like, why do you get everything? And it makes you not like them or jealous of them. Like, let's be honest. The guy's built like a freaking Mack truck. He can beat the shit out of anybody. And you know what? He's a good-looking guy who talks well. You know what I mean? He has a lot of qualities that average Joes are just going to look at him and say, I don't like that you have all of that.
It's true. And, he's one of those guys that comes off like is so confident that maybe it borderlines on arrogance or what have you, which is, but I will say this, and I always say this now, and I'll say it again. When you talk about a mixed martial artist and you say that they're so confident that they seem almost cocky, like, you can't fault them for that. Like, what the courage that it takes to step into a steel cage in a pair of shorts, with another dude trying to take your head off, like, you better be almost insanely self-confident. But I'm in the same boat with you. I was I'd seen Dricus Du Plessis. He was coming up on the international scene, obviously EFC, KSW, had kind of watched some of the highlights and seen some of his work out there.
He has one of those viral fights. Have you seen him? One of those viral fights where the guy was like talking all this mess about his girlfriend and this, that, and the other. Like, I that still comes across my timeline like every few weeks.
100%. I mean, this dude has some incredible finishes early on. I mean, absolutely finishing machine. But he actually debuted out in Fight Island in Abu Dhabi, and so that was a unique situation where we were all like stuck in this bubble, right? And so, like, normally you kind of go into a town and you leave and you're busy and all that. There was really nowhere else for us to go. So, ended up getting to speak for at length with Dricus after his debut, and really, man, a good dude. And so I get it. I understand. Like, you laid it out why some people might not like him, but he is a very likable guy behind the scenes, and just a big fight fan, and a obviously doing big things in the sport, and he's on this win streak. And he's another guy, right? Like, early on, people are like, who's this guy? Whatever. But bro, you beat Robert Whittaker, like the way he did, like that enough. I mean, then because I saw some people say, oh, come on, man, that was unbelievable. And I saw some people say, well, Derek Brunson, but yeah, at what stage of his career? Darren Till, yeah, but at what stage of his career? And I get it. But as soon as that Robert Whittaker result happens, like, criticism has to stop. You just got to be like, oh, my bad. That dude's the real deal. I was wrong. Let's put this man in. So I'm excited for this title fight, man. I think there's some good storylines coming in. You said it, though. The stylistic matchup is not an easy one for Sean Strickland. In the same way that you laid out the case that Sean was going to be problematic for Israel Adesanya, and then he went out there and absolutely delivered and wrested away the title, I think you're laying out the exact scenario why. Not saying that Sean can't prove victorious. He can. He's a dog, man. It's not easy to get Sean Strickland out of there. But if there's a guy that's made to beat that dog, it might be DDP. So I'm super intrigued by this main event as well.
Rounds 3, 4, and 5 could be very interesting in this fight because that's the point where Sean Strickland typically, now he did it right out the gates with Adesanya, but later in the fight, that is where Sean Strickland is made to live. And he wears you down. And so 3, 4, 5 in this fight is going to be crazy because DDP could come out there and just with all this power that he has, and just coming out there wild, herky-jerky. And if Sean Strickland just stays calm, shelled up, and composed, picks a few shots here and there to let him know he's there, then 3, 4, 5, just saying.
That's it. I love it. You're so right. Those opening rounds are going to be tension for Sean Strickland, right? Can he survive the storm? Not to say that Sean couldn't do something early, but look, you think about the power that Dricus Du Plessis, especially early on, that's going to be the tension. And then the tension shifts the other. I feel if it goes that way, if Dricus doesn't get that early finish, it really doesn't put Sean in trouble early. And as you said, it goes to 3, 4, 5. I think you're going to feel that momentum shift, where you can just feel like, oh, wait, hold on. Is he slowing down a little bit? Oh, is he still going? And again, but then what if Dricus answers the call and be like, hey, remember all that stuff you said about my cardio and I told you it wasn't an issue? Watch me show you it wasn't an issue. You know what I mean? So there's going to be all these little mind games and battles within it. So it is a very, very intriguing fight. And by the way, we still got a press conference. We still got some media days. Like these guys are outspoken, you know what I mean? And they've already had the brawl in the crowd. I'm sure UFC security is going to high alert throughout fight. It's not like these guys are bad dudes that they're just like, oh, we can't control these two guys. It's like, no, they're going to fight if they see each other. So I'm so UFC security to be on high alert. But man, that fight week, it's just going to get more and more and more intriguing for sure.
I think DDP is actually a really big fan of Sean Strickland.
I think so too.
He has even come out and said, hey man, the guy's a fighter. Like from what I said to him, if he didn't want to fight me, then there'd be a problem. The simple fact that he did try to fight me, I have more respect for him now than I ever had. And I love that. And then Dricus is now just this little softer side. Like, yeah, man, like abuse is bad, this, that, and the other, but if you're going to be able to dish it, you got to be able to take it. That was my whole point to all this. And the simple fact that he came out and not said he was going to fight me and didn't rah. The simple fact that he did, man, hats off to Sean Strickland. I love that Dricus has been so complicit in coming out and just being completely honest with all that.
This has the potential to embody everything I love about the sport of mixed martial arts.
These guys are going to be best friends.
That's what I'm saying. Because here's what's going to happen is those two dudes are going to go to absolute war. They're absolute savages. And then I guarantee you, late Saturday night or early Sunday afternoon, they're having a beer together. There's no question about it whatsoever. They're sitting at the bar like, oh, you crazy SOB, man. You really rocked me in that second. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to be buddies after this. There's no question.
Man, and they say that MMA isn't romantic.
I love it. That dude, it is. I mean, look, and I know you're like me, man. You've been around this game for a long time. That to me is the epitome of what I love about the sport. Like two dudes, they're like, man, when this bell sounds, like I am coming to rip your head off. I am coming to impose my will on you. I am going to separate you from consciousness, or I'm going to wrap my arms around your neck, and I'm going to force you to tap and beg me to quit because I dominated you. And then afterwards, I'm going to pick you up off the ground. I'm going to pat you on the back. I'm going to tell you thank you for this opportunity that we just had to come out here and test ourselves and make some money together. And let's go have a frosty beverage, man. I love that stuff.
And that's why we love this sport, man. More often than not, it's like that.
That's it.
I got to tell you, though. Okay, before we wrap up, at first I started peek behind the curtain here. I said, John, I'm wildly unprepared today. I don't know what we're going to talk about. I have a couple things that I want to go, and now
You're not supposed to say that part out loud. You're not supposed to say that part out loud.
Come on, man. We listen, when I got the Human Almanac, the MMA Almanac, I can just give you a topic and we're running with it, and I love it. But this past weekend, I was at a fight show in Mississippi, right? I was asked to just kind of come out, and I was asked by the commission, come out and just watch. We watch, I want you to look at some refs. I want you to look at some judges. Give me your opinion on them. Okay. There was as many fights in the crowd as there were in the cage, man. And if you're going to think, where's that's going to happen? And I say, hey, if there was a bunch of fights in the crowd at a show, what state do you think it'd be in?
Well, I'll give you two. It'd be either Mississippi. I'll be down in Mississippi because they be doing it. But I'll tell you what, it's funny because the UFC is going to Boardwalk Hall on March 30th. And I truly remember the last time there was a UFC event there. And I can't quote the card offhand. I'm pretty sure Frankie Edgar was on it. But the thing that really stuck
was
out
that was the Gray Maynard fight, wasn't it?
No. Those were all not that one. No, this has been more recently than that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But but there were like 7 fights in the crowd that night. Like it was just like all over. It got to the point where it just cracked. So I will say Atlantic City, New Jersey, or Mississippi.
So one good thing that there's a new athletic commissioner down there, and he's really trying to change the perception of MMA in Mississippi. It's kind of like our old commissioner. He was really good, very knowledgeable, but kind of like let promotions kind of run wild, right? And pick the judges and the refs and this, that, and the other. And that's new. And so I take my hand off to Randy, the new athletic commissioner for Mississippi. But we have a long climb ahead. But when you get to a fight card, right, and there's fights going on, and I hope this changes about Mississippi, but it's one of the reasons I love it too, right? That I'm going to see these fights in the ground. There was this one guy. So this from a small town in Cleveland, Mississippi. They had a fight team come up. They had like 3 or 4 guys on the card, and literally half the city made like the 4-hour trip down to South Haven too. And they had one side of the whole venue. They were going nuts. And they were fighting this other guy. And so now it got contentious, right? The fighter flipped off the other guy's fans. The whole people went crazy. And then a fight started over there, right? One of the persons threw beer on like the corner man. A fight started. It was wild, right? It was awesome. And then one of the guys for the non-big crowd guy, he went over there and got into the melee, got into the mix. Then later on, I see the same guy in a suit. This guy's in a suit, wasted. And he goes over and he's starting a fight in another part of the venue. And I'm watching this, right? I'm kind of like a special guest of the commission. So I'm just sitting back enjoying the show. And I go, this ain't going to end well right now. And the cops come up. And they keep on trying to calm him down. And they're like, okay. And I'm overhearing this. And they're like, we're not going to ask you again. You're asked to leave. We're not going to ask you again. We're giving you opportunity. We do not want to take you to jail. Like, please just leave. And then he got to the point where he was like, you don't know who the F I am, and I will F you up to the cops. These cops grabbed him and launched. They launched this dude over, the cage side tables. And it was like you see like Roadhouse, like the tables are flipping up with all the drinks go flying. Man, it was some wild, fun stuff. It reminded me of like 1999 regional MMA.
Yeah, that's the Wild Wild West, man. That's crazy. Yeah, it's funny, man. And you see it a lot, especially like you said, smaller shows. It's the fans of the teams more than the teams, right? And you get it, man. Emotions are high. Like that's your brother.
That's my cousin over there.
Yeah, exactly. And you got to fight for him. It's like, as you know, man, it's the most helpless feeling when it's your teammate or your loved one or whatever that's in there because you want to help them and there's no way you can, you know what I mean? It's I get it. But it's always like the crowd that starts to go at it. It's the fans, it's the teams, that do it, which is crazy. But man, once the cops get involved, they don't need to know who you are, all right? Just at that point, that's when you just got to realize, like, you know what? I've had some fun this evening. I've proved myself. It is time to walk away.
They gave him every opportunity to walk away. And it was funny because they slammed this dude over. They slammed him over the table, right? Cuff him, walk him out. And he's like, no, it's cool. I'm cool. They're like, dude, you lost that opportunity, bro.
No. We're not good now. We're not good now. I've already put you through the Spanish announcing table over there, bro. Like, no. You're going to jail now.
Oh man, one of the many reasons I love some regional MMA.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely.
Well, man, what you got coming up?
I'm heading out to Belgium this week, actually. I'm going to be commentating a show out there, MMA Bushido, so I'm looking forward to that. I got to do that once before, so I will miss the UFC's debut this week, but it will be in Belgium where they have some fine frosty beverages, maybe a cigar or two out there while we put in the work.
Drink warm beer out in Belgium?
No. Well, it's room temperature maybe, but they've got all those nice craft brews, man. So many good ones out there, But room temperature there is like ice cold for me and you in Las Vegas and Mississippi.
Okay. Yeah, no kidding, right? Give it 2 minutes outdoors, it's room temperature.
Yeah.
Well, good stuff. Yeah. I just got a lot of NBA basketball games this weekend coming up, so I got nothing. But yeah, man, exciting. The docket is starting to fill up. I'm here for it. So, anyways, with that being said, we went over an hour today when I thought we were going to have our time getting to 30 minutes. But that's what happens when I got this guy sitting across from me, man. I love it. I love it.
We love the sport, man. We'll talk about it all day.
Well, good stuff. For John Morgan, I'm Eric McMahon. Enjoy the fights.